You are listening to the Cycling Podcast at the Tour de France in association with Rapha, the fastest closing in the World Tour, the home of cycling with character. Ride and watch with Rapha in 2019 as a partner EF Education First and Canyon SRAM. Stage 9, today we're in Brioude.
Happy Bastille Day, François.
Thank you, guys. Merci beaucoup.
Although you don't call it Bastille Day, do you?
No, we never call it Bastille Day. It's only le 14 juillet, the 14th of July. And yeah, it's strange. I don't know why you guys call it Bastille Day. For most French people, if you told them it's le jour de la Bastille, they would understand what you mean, because la Bastille is now no longer a prison. It's kind of a famous square of Paris. So no, it's le 14 juillet. Simple.
Well, I mean, hoping that we can continue an annual tradition tonight with you singing us out with La Marseillaise.
Sure, I can.
We're surrounded by people here. You won't feel self-conscious or anything. They might join in. You know
what I do? I'm not going to stand up and sing La Marseillaise, especially as a band of Boy Scouts. It's just,
oh, wow.
just sitting next to it. I'm going to do it smooth, sweet, kind of crooning La Marseillaise,
Oh, goodness.
So great. Some crooning coming. Well, we can hear the clack of the pétanque balls behind us. It's a lovely scene, isn't it? Where are we, Lionel?
We're in La Voûte Chiac, and we're just outside our hotel, the Hotel du Pêcheur, next to the river. There's a very attractive-looking bridge. François, who has a fear of walking over bridges,
That's right.
can only admire the architecture. Won't be strolling over that in the morning, will you?
No, it's impressive architecture, and it's really a beautiful bridge. But as you know, the more beautiful bridges are, the more spectacular they are, and the more frightened I am to walk over them. So I'll see it from a distance. It's great, but I won't walk over it.
Well, listen, you two gas bags made last night's episode extremely long, so we're going to get a bit of a rattle on tonight, aren't we? We're not going to do as long an episode as we did last night. Give us a tale of the tap, please, Lionel.
Okay, Richard. Stage 9 from Saint-Étienne to Brioude. 170.5 kilometres, one abandoned today. Alessandro De Marchi, who was in the epic break with Thomas de Gendt yesterday, he crashed and has had to pull out of the race, so bad day for the CCC man. And it was a day that was characterised by a big break. There were lots of big names in it. I think 14 riders went up the road, and it really kicked off in the last 30 kilometres when Bora Hansgrohe's Lucas Pöstelberger, winner of a stage of the opening stage of the Giro a couple of years ago, went clear. He was looking pretty good, but after he was caught by the others, Nicolas Roche. Nicholas Roche. Well,
is that because it's the 14th of July?
Yeah, well, I thought
the French pronunciation.
He went clear for Sunweb, and I thought maybe François and I would be celebrating this evening a French-Irish victory, but
Absolutely.
It was not to be.
And it's Nicolas, yeah. I mean, when he speaks French, he's Nicolas, and when he speaks English, Nicolas.
French is his first language, I think.
Well, he's born in France, of course. For those who don't know, his father was Stephen Roche, the Irish 1987 Tour de France champion. His mother was French. Anyway, Roche was caught. First of all by Tish Benoot, and then Daryl Impey bridged up to them, and then Roche fell away from those two. The chase group behind had some pretty powerful names in it, but they never really looked like getting on terms. Marc Soler, Oliver Naesen, Jan Tratnik and Jasper Stuyven were the chasers for a while, but Benoot and Daryl Impey were the two who fought out the finish. Benoot really had the odds stacked against him. He was trying to make it 2 wins in a row for Lotto Soudal, and although he tried to catch Impey by surprise in the sprint, the South African champion came round him comfortably to win the stage. Mitchelton-Scott's first Tour stage win since Michael Matthews in Revel in 2016. Very little GC action in the group behind. Romain Bardet made a Bastille Day show of things on the climb, pulled Richie Porte and George Bennett clear with him for a brief while, but that came to nothing, and the bunch eventually pootled in 16 and a half minutes down. No change overall. Julian Alaphilippe still in yellow, Sagan in green, Tim Wellens in the polka dots, and Giulio Ciccone in the white jersey. Tomorrow, well, it feels like it ought to be a rest day, but it's not. We carry on with what will likely be a sprint into Albi.
I think George Bennett was trying to get to the finish a bit earlier to enjoy the cricket, Lionel.
The fastest closing in the World Tour, the home of cycling with character. Ride and Watch with Rapha in 2019 as a partner EF Education First and Canyon Sharam.
Thank you very much indeed to Rapha, our headline sponsor, whose support enables us to cover all the 3 Grand Tours with the daily episodes. We're very grateful to them for their support. Mentioned yesterday, the latest EF Gone Racing film focuses on Michael Woods. There'll be more of those to come. I spoke to Michael Woods at the start this morning. We'll hear from him a little bit later on, and I spoke to another very interesting gentleman at the start, Remy Philippot. Is that how you pronounce his name, or Philippot?
Philippot, yeah.
Philippot. He's a surgeon at the hospital in Saint-Étienne who operated on Chris Froome when he was crashed at the Dauphiné recently. So we'll hear from him a little bit later on. What are you looking like that for?
Well, your little joke about George Bennett rushing back to watch the cricket.
On me?
Well, the game is tied. Both teams have scored 242 runs. I know you're an aficionado of cricket, so now they have to have a kind of a super over, almost like extra time in football. We'll keep you posted, listeners.
Or a tie break in tennis, because at the same time, oddly enough, there were no Serbs or Swiss riders in the break today, trying to get to Brioude on time for the Wimbledon final.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, isn't there? But we're expecting. Well, we had fireworks last night, didn't we, in Saint-Étienne? A lot of celebrations last night for 14th of July. But Lionel, I went to the buses that finished Mitchelton-Scott, were the furthest bus from the finish. Very emotional scenes around there after Daryl Impey's win. It was a quality group, as you said. Lots of teams represented there. 1 or 2 missed out. UAE Team Emirates were one of the teams that missed out, and Rui Costa tried to jump across at one point. Apparently attacked when the yellow jersey Julian Alaphilippe stopped to answer a call of nature, and this was controversial. But most of the teams were represented there, so there was a very good chance of that group staying away. And then with such strong riders likes of Oliver Naas and Jasper Stuyven there, a real challenge to figure out how to win from that group, and Daryl Impey did it perfectly, clawing his way up to those guys on that climb, making a huge effort to do that. But once he got there, you knew he was the fastest finisher.
Yeah, my question to you, Rich, was what was he doing in that break anyway, when you think that Adam Yates is here for the overall for Mitchelton-Scott, still well placed. Adam Yates not really conceded any ground yet. We always talk about the way that Team Ineos, previously Team Sky, have always been so totally focused on one job in the Tour de France, and that is winning it overall. No other teams seem to really do that, and it seemed a strange one to me. Daryl Impey is one of the strongest riders that Mitchelton-Scott have, as he showed by winning the stage today. But will they come to regret sending him out there? I'm sure they won't.
I don't think so.
No,
did Astana have anyone up there in the group? So Astana and Ineos were the 2 teams, I think, who are still with that.
And Groupama FDJ didn't have a rider either. Yeah. So obviously that, not to contradict you there, but it was actually the teams who sent guys up front are obviously the ones whose goal is not, just winning the Tour de France, because they probably think it's so difficult to do, and they need to, they need success. They need to bring back. Look at the Jumbo-Visma, for instance, who didn't have a man in the break either. They pretend to be one of the big teams with Stefan Kruijswijk being their man, but I mean every time they had a chance to win a stage, they did, because and Impey actually explained that in his press conference. He said lots of riders were in the same position towards this weekend, with the stage yesterday, the stage today, and maybe a little bit the stage tomorrow. They're all the riders with no chance for GC contention. They had actually written down these 3 stages as their permission to go up front and look for victory, and that's what Impey said. He said we had a kind of permission of to try our luck on these stages, because on the previous ones it was either sprint stages and we would lose time, either La Planche de Bellefille, there was no way we could be there, and actually the 3. Greg Van Avermaet told me, I talked to him 2 days ago, he told me he really looked at these 3 stages as the only chances chances to win a stage. Guys like Jasper Stuyven were the same, and a rider like Impey is exactly the same type of rider. If he wants to have, and actually now that they've won a stage, the defense of Adam Yates and his chances overall will be an easier task, because you're relieved by the fact that you already won something in terms of confidence in the team, instead of being like this wasted energy. I think quite the opposite. It boosted the morale of the team.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I wasn't for a minute suggesting that that there's somehow no value in Daryl Impey winning a stage. It's the first time he's won a Tour stage. He's had the yellow jersey before, briefly, of course, but never won a stage. But just that kind of single-minded focus of Ineos, just every year, it does sort of sharpen the mind a little bit. They go for one thing, and that one thing only.
Remember that Mark Cavendish in the team at one stage, and that's not when he was the most successful, to be honest.
But yeah, I mean, there are riders on that Ineos team, Michał Kwiatkowski, even Dylan van Baarle, who you wonder,
Oh yeah, today they would have.
I mean, those guys would have relished that opportunity, and it's a guy like Kwiatkowski sacrificing himself so completely at the Tour de France to helping, being third or fourth in the pecking order, really, on the mountain stage and so on. It's a waste of an incredible talent, really, frankly, without a rider like him. Anyway, emotional scenes at the Mitchelton-Scott bus. Every rider who came back was just cock a hoop, and Matt White was pretty tearful at the finish. I spoke first of all to Julian Dean, who was the sports director in the car following the break and giving Daryl Impey some instructions. So we hear first from Julian Dean, then from Luke Durbridge's teammate, and then finally from Matt White. Julian, Daryl's a great worker for the team. He doesn't get many opportunities like this, I guess, in a race like the Tour de France. What was the thinking today in letting him go in that break?
It was, yesterday's stage and today's stage were objectives we targeted from the outset, along with riding for Adam for the GC. So, we're a team that has always allowed opportunities to many of our guys. We try not to be one-dimensional, and we think about that all the time, and the riders we bring on this team and the strategies that we have and the riders we select to come to these races.
And it was a strong group that he found himself in, with a lot of guys there who, good at winning races. What was coming into the final hour? What were you thinking? What were you telling him about how to ride it with the climb coming out? Who to watch? How to play it?
Yeah, I mean, we always try to just break these races down into phases. You have the early phase, that's getting in the break. There's the conservancy phase, and then when you come into a final like that, you've got to, like you said, that was a really, really stacked breakaway, and nothing's really going to be certain there. But you've got to identify what Daryl's great qualities are. He's very good at reading races. He's got a lot of experience and a cool head on him, and it was just a case of reminding Daryl of that, and him making the right decisions and giving him the confidence to make those decisions.
And when Benoit and Roach were clear on the climb, that was obviously a key moment in the race, where he had to presumably dig very deep to get up to them.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, those guys rent, and I would have I haven't spoken to Daryl, but I would imagine he could have gone with them at the time. He chose to wait a little bit and be calm and collected in his decision making, and certainly paid off.
It's awesome, it's Tour de France, but the biggest thing is I feel is it's Daryl, just gives his life and soul to this team, and always supporting other riders for victory. And he got his due, it's probably his 7th Tour de France. He's had his ups and downs, and couldn't be more happier.
It's his biggest win of his career. Of course, he's wore the yellow jerseys, but he's never won a stage in the Tour de France. And to win it in his national champion jersey would be a very, very proud moment for him, and he'll never forget. Matt Wilson and Julian Dean were behind the breakaway, so we were pretty relaxed. We've got to concentrate on keeping Adam and the group around Adam focused, so you sort of can't let your emotions get involved at that sort of time, because at the end of the day we've got two things. We're trying to win the stage, and we're also trying to win the Tour de France. So we've got to keep focused on getting those guys to the line safely. But when Postelberger went, it was a do or die move. It was either going to work, and a successful move that got from a long way out. And when I didn't actually see how the group split into two there, but when I saw Daryl was in that first chase group of 7, I knew he was the fastest guy there. But the best move was when he got rid of Stuyven and Nason, because they're very, very strong boys, and he wouldn't want to mess with them in a downhill sprint, that's for sure. So Then when he did a great move across the top there to get across to Tej Minute and the boys there. Coming into this finish, Tej Minute's a strong guy, but a downhill sprint, we're pretty confident that Daryl could towel him up, mate. This is our 22nd win of the year. It's not our first, but it's a bloody big one. It's a Tour de France, you know. And everyone sees the riders and the sacrifices they make, but the whole organisation, this is a win for the whole organisation. And again, it doesn't change our focus. We came here to try to win a stage and then support Adam Yates as best possible to try to get him on the podium. That's one box ticked, but we've got a very big one to go, and we've got still a long way in that effort as well to go.
Chute à l'arrière du peloton, cycling podcast team car at the back of the pack, please.
This episode of our Tour de France coverage is sponsored by The Economist, the smart guide to the forces impacting your world. We've actually been listening to The Economist podcast in the car as we've been driving our way around France. It's a perfect accompaniment to the magazine, and if you want to get a free copy of the magazine to see what The Economist has to offer, you can get it delivered to your door by texting the word cycling to 78070. Richard, have you been reading your print copy of the mag this week?
Of course I have, Lionel. It's an article that I hope François will be able to talk about, because it's about the price of books in France. The article is called Book Value. It's about the fixed price agreement in France, which has been in place since 1981. We had a similar rule in the UK, which was abandoned in the 1990s. But the agreement in France is under threat now from the likes of Amazon, but also e-books, book subscriptions, and sales of second-hand books, which might not always be second-hand. I love the quote from Franck Riester, is that the correct pronunciation? Or the French culture minister, who said, "On the internet you find what you look for, but only in a bookshop do you find what you were not looking for." Now, François, you're an author, a publisher, and you own a bookshop in Paris, so you have a kind of three-way perspective on this. This fixed price agreement in France, does it work?
Yes, sort of. I mean, it was a very good idea when it happened, because it really kind of curbed the sales of books in supermarkets. And you know, in France we have those huge supermarkets, and that was all the trend in the 1980s and 1990s. And probably without the fixed price, it might have ruined the little bookshop you have in the town centers. Now, my impression is that it should probably evolve a little bit, because the market has changed thanks to the internet. Actually, it's not even so good for the little bookshops anymore, because it means that even old books you've got, you can't sell them at a discount price.
Books are expensive in France and very plain in their design.
It depends on there's various collections. I mean, you've got the hardback are about between 14 and 25 euros, and the paperback is between €2 and 12 euros probably. Well, the problem with the fixed price, as you say, and the fact that it's a little bit a high price for the hardback, means that actually I think probably 70% of the market, especially for novels these days, is paperback. Well, I see at my bookshop, lots of customers come look at the hardback, unless it's a star or an author they really like. They say, "Oh, cool! In 2 years' time or 18 months' time, when it's published in paperback, I'll buy it paperback." Then it's yours, and then you sell it back again on eBay, for instance. It's no longer a new book, so you can discount a book that's actually a day old. So there's a problem there.
Well, as you can see, The Economist has got us talking in the car as we travel around the Tour de France, and if you'd like to sample The Economist as well, then text the word cycling to 78070 and you can have a copy delivered to your door. That's the word cycling to 78070.
I'd like to say something. There is one book, at least, that's never too expensive, and that's the cycling podcast book about the Tour de France. It's the Tour de France 2 years ago now.
Would that be a journey through the cycling year? I think,
that's exactly the one. Yeah. And I think actually its value should go up, through years like good wine.
François thinks it's just about the Tour de France because that was the chapter that he wrote. Well, one guy I went to speak to at the start this morning, fellas, was Mike Woods. You suggested in the podcast last night, Lionel, that Geraint Thomas may have felt that he was responsible for the crash, but he was the first one to go down. Dave Brailsford in the morning had said how dangerous the roads are in this area. These were the roads coming into Saint-Étienne. They're narrow, they're twisty, there's some gravel on them, and there was a wall, and the race was really on as well, and it was pretty frenetic, wasn't it? So yeah, it wasn't surprising to see a crash.
No. Well, when you see the little clip of how the accident happened, I mean, Woods' wheels just slipped from under him. I mean, those things happen, and it could happen at any moment when they're racing on the limit.
But he took responsibility for it when I spoke to him at the start this morning. Here's what he said. Mike, your legs bandaged up there. How is it?
It's actually surprisingly good. Just a bit of road rash.
What happened exactly in the crash? What do you remember about it?
Definitely my fault. Just came through the corner, really thought I had it. Wasn't even concerned about going through. And all of a sudden, the rear wheel just slid out. I think it was just a bit of bad luck. Maybe not enough weight through the left pedal because it was a right turn. But maybe just what I figure is maybe just to hit a little bump or maybe a little bit of oil or grease on the road, and rear wheel slid out. Really disappointed, particularly because I was sitting so well in the GC. Really thought I was going to move up yesterday. I thought that my teammates rode an amazing race in order to just try and set that up. And to let them down was made for a bit of a tough sleep last night. And then also the fact that it may have compromised someone else's race. Geraint Thomas went down as well because of that. Just not happy about it.
You did lose that time, but I guess you weren't. It was been a nice bonus to be sitting in top 10, but it's not really what you came for, is it?
Yeah, it's been. I've spent the last few hours, especially after talking to Charlie Wigelius and JV about it. I had this big emotional high the last 8 days, sitting in the top 10 of the GC at the Tour de France, feeling like every Canadian that's watching the Tour is following me and supporting me, and then to have that gone was a tough blow and a bit of a emotional crash last night. However, like you said, we're back at what our original goal was: me support Rigo and stage hunt. So in no way is this end of day scenario. I think we still have plenty of racing left, and I have plenty of opportunities.
So Michael Woods there, recalibrating a little bit. I think he was obviously enjoying looking at the results every night and seeing his name in the top 10 in his first Tour de France. But as he said, there's not what he's here for, and his job is to look after Rigoberto Urán and maybe have a chance for a stage win himself at some point. What I was also surprised to learn was that, I don't know if I was surprised, but EF were doing an awful lot on the front in the closing stages of Saturday's stage, and it was for Mike Woods. I thought it was for Alberto Bettiol. He was dropped with Vincenzo Nibali, but it was for Woods, who they might have fancied may have been able to go with Alaphilippe and Pinot on that climb, because that's his strength.
Well, one other thing that we didn't really talk about last night, but which we're still rumbling on this morning, was this issue of the TV motorbikes and their proximity to the riders. Jakob Fuglsang of Astana was one of the riders suggesting that the motorbikes were too close to the Alaphilippe Pinot duo and was giving them too much assistance. Now, recently there was a study released just indicating how much of an advantage a motorbike can give from even sort of 50 metres away, and we're going to put together a Kilometre Zero on not just the subject of the motorbikes being close to the riders, but also what some of those motorbikes are doing, because I think sometimes there's a sense that the motorbikes aren't an integral part of the race somehow, and actually the TV motorbikes especially so, but also the stills cameramen, all of the other motorbikes that are accompanying the race. Yeah, I mean, it's part of the whole rolling show, isn't it? Some are there to keep the peloton safe, some are there to give the riders information and assistance, some are there to cover the race so that we can all watch it. So that will be the subject of a Kilometre Zero at some point in the coming week. But Kilometre Zero, sponsored by Hansgrohe Showers and Taps, returns tomorrow morning with part 2 of my conversation with Sunday Times journalist David Walsh about the 1999 Tour de France. And
a riveting listen is too. I'm just going to mention, because you mentioned Kilometre Zero, supported very kindly by Hansgrohe. We got an email from Nick Moss. Dear chaps, I am on holiday in Schiltach. Is that the pronunciation? Schiltach? This is a very small town in the Black Forest in Germany. It also happens to be the home of Hansgrohe. Did you know they have a free-to-enter museum, and this includes experiencing their showers for an hour? An hour? With a bit of luck, I hope to be able to experience this in the next week. I tried to become a friend this week, but I had problems because I'm in Germany and this affects my PayPal account. Well, Nick, hopefully you can sort that out when you're back in the UK. But do tell us how your hour-long shower in the Hansgrohe Museum went. That sounds fascinating. Brilliant.
Oh, God.
Excellent. So yeah, that's Kilometre Zero every Monday to Friday. So 5 coming up this week.
Outside the team bus with
Hugo Hull, Astana Pro Team.
Hugo, this is your second year with Astana. You didn't ride a Grand Tour last year. Were you surprised to be in the frame for the Tour de France? And when did you find out that you were in the final team?
No, I was not surprised because last year I was close to do it, and that was the big goal this year. Unfortunately, last year, I didn't do any Grand Tour because I prefer to race on my home race, Montreal, Quebec, than do the Vuelta after I've been the last guy cut for the Tour. This year was my main objective, so I'm really happy to be here, and it's an honor to be riding with those guys beside me that have a pretty big palmarès.
They certainly do. How has your first week been? I mean, you had a very dramatic first day.
Yes, it started pretty bad. It cannot get worse. Now we can only improve, and I think we took a big hit on the first day, but now we move forward, and Jacob's feeling better every day. So we keep the same match plan. It's part of the race. Grant Thomas went down yesterday, Michael Woods also. So everyone have his bad luck, and you need to overcome it and be strong in the head and keep the focus. We have some next 2 weeks are the big one, so hopefully Jacob is up there with the best.
Where were you when he crashed? Were you nearby, or did you hear a shout on the radio?
I was just in front. We are starting to move up, lining up. I was third in the line of the team, and they lost our wheel a little bit, and then that's where Caruso lost it, and just take him down. And it's Magnus Cort that advised us that okay, Jacob went down, so I slowed down and I wait for him. And then when I saw his face, I was like, oh fuck, we're not good here. So I tried to stay with him, and
you must have thought, welcome to the Tour de France, your heart beating out of your chest.
I don't know. Every race we take a lot of risk, and you never know when it could happen. So it's a thing that we cannot control all the time. So.
You started with the Spider Tech team. Was that run by Steve Bauer at the time? And are you aware of what Steve Bauer achieved in the Tour?
Yes, of course. I know a lot about Steve. It was a really great time to race with him. We had a great team. He have done some really nice thing in the past, and I think he showed to us North American that it's possible, especially for a Canadian, a young guy from Quebec. We don't have a lot of pro cyclists, so it's good to have a person to refer to that it's possible. It's a huge step to come from America to Europe and then slowly gain your spot. It's a lot of work, and it's also hard to be away from a family.
You're obviously from Quebec. French language first or English language first?
First I'm French, and I learn English by doing bicycles.
So does France feel familiar to you? Did it feel like home from home?
Yeah, the language is familiar. I raced 5 years with the French team, AG2R, and I also live some time in the year in the south of France, so I'm pretty used to France. Yeah, they are pretty nice and warm with us, Quebec, Canadian, yeah.
How important are those two races, the World Tour races, in your home area for the profile of cycling?
Of course, it's really important for us. We don't have a lot of race. We are the only World Tour race one-day race in North America. It showed the kid, it inspired. It's a valuable chance for me to show people what I can do all year long in Europe, and I think it's really important. And the organization of Grand Prix Cyclistes with Serge Deschanel, they do a really good work to put those even top quality and really take care of the rider there.
You hope to ride them again this year?
Yeah, of course, it's the plan, so I will be there.
And lastly, there are two Canadians in the race. Mike Woods, not from Quebec, so I mean, do you count yourselves as from the same country, or is there a small rivalry there between the French speakers and the English speakers?
No. Mike speaks really good French. He's now living in Quebec. He's not born in Quebec, but he lives on the Quebec side now. He understands what's the best, so he just joined us, and he spent also a lot of his career in the French team. We had more team in Quebec side, so I know Mike is. I would say part of us.
The cycling podcast at the 2019 Tour de France is supported by Science in Sport. Science in Sport, fueled by science.
Thank you to Science and Sport for their support of the cycling podcast and their support of you in your endeavours, because they're offering 25% off, of course, all your Science and Sport products. Go to scienceandsport.com and enter the code SISCP25 at the checkout now. Science and Sport are the nutrition providers to Team Ineos, of course, and have been for many years, as when they were Team Sky as well. They are offering an incredible prize at Science and Sport to experience a day in the team car of Team Ineos at either the Vuelta or the Tour of Britain, which includes 2 nights accommodation, transport and £400 spending money. It's difficult to spend £400 in a team car for the day, so that's very generous indeed. Lionel,
I'm not sure that you have to spend it in the team car. Do you not spend it on...
Yes, I'm sure you can spend it whenever you want. Pocket it, and you can do what you like with it.
Lovely, delicious food and drink and souvenirs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds good.
5 runners-up will win a signed Team Ineos jersey, and there are other runners-up prizes too. Go to scienceandsport.com/sign up. Now, speaking of Team Ineos, I've spoken in the last couple of mornings to Richard Usher, who's the team doctor at Team Ineos. He was at the Dauphiné when Chris Froome had the crash that means he's not here to try and win a 5th Tour de France. Now, it's amazing how quickly the sport moves on, the teams move on, and Team Ineos in particular have just carried on as if as if it's incidental that Chris Froome, their leader, is not here. I think, with Team Sunweb, for example, missing Tom Dumoulin has really meant a complete change in their plans, their approach to the race. But Ineos have Geraint Thomas and Egan Bernal to kind of slot into the place that Froome would have been in. It's quite interesting to see how it's just business as usual for them. Meanwhile, Froome is at home in the south of France. I understand he's bought a new house and it's got a swimming pool in it. He's been doing some rehab in the swimming pool. He's got to stay off his leg, which he broke, for 6 weeks. So he's in a wheelchair at the moment and in the swimming pool a bit. But I've been speaking a bit to Richard Usher about his rehabilitation and the injuries that he suffered. And I mentioned earlier on that the surgeon, Rémi Philippot, who was the Saint-Étienne surgeon who operated on him after his crash, operated on his leg, he was a guest of Team Ineos today. So we'll hear a little bit from Richard Usher. And then from Rémi Philippot.
I saw him at Roanne when the paramedics, who were fantastic, I have to say, we've got great admiration. We said a big thank you to 2 of the paramedics that were there. They did a great job stabilising him, did everything properly, and then when he was stable, got him into Roanne. I saw him very briefly there just to talk to him, but he'd had a lot of really strong painkillers and was a little bit sleepy, a little bit not quite so coherent. And then they flew him off by helicopter to Saint-Étienne. I met him at the other end, and then we were really lucky in Saint-Étienne. There was a fantastic professor there who was in the airport waiting to go to China to operate on some of the Chinese football team. And they rang him and said, we've got Chris Froome coming in, lower limb injuries, which was his specialty. And he came back from the airport, cancelled his trip to China, and then he kept us really informed. He did the right thing. With a fractured femur, there's a risk of what calls a fat embolism, which can be serious, and you have to operate really quickly. So he took him straight to theatre. We waited with Michel for 6-7 hours overnight till Chris came out, and then Michel saw him very briefly. And then really when he woke up, we got to see the extent of his injuries in the intensive care unit the next day. But the work they'd done on him with his elbow, he's with nothing but praise. And we sent the films off to London, some specialists down there, and they again said what a great job's been done.
How bad was Chris's injuries?
The injuries was so bad because it's a high energy level. You understand, it's a high injury, but the recovery is really good because he have a very strong mentality. You understand, so he live with the pain, and so it's a very good guy for that. Yeah.
And are you in touch with him still now? Are you keeping in regular contact with him?
Yeah, every day. Every day we have contact with all the medical team to organize the good recovery, to guide him for the different steps for the recovery. And the medical team of the Team Ineos is very well organized. So it's really good, yes.
I guess, I mean, it's probably routine for you to carry out surgery like that, but when you are operating on a 4-time Tour de France winner and the surgery lasts for so long, is it difficult for you to stay focused on the job? Do you allow thoughts of how important it is to get it right?
When we do a surgery like that, we have to detach from the celebrity of the patient, because you don't have to be under pressure. You have to stay quiet and to detach the celebrity. Yes, it's important.
And are you, I mean, the operation was very long, it was 8 hours of surgery, I believe, but was it successful? I mean, are you happy that the wound will heal successfully?
Yes, the recovery good. So it's a specific patient. The recovery is very specific. It go very fast and faster than a classic patient. Yes.
He had a lot of other injuries as well, the ribs, the elbow, the hip.
Yes, yeah.
Which was there one that was the most serious, or was it all of them put together that made it so serious?
It's all the injury together that is serious. Yes.
Do you have any idea when he'll be back on a bike, back racing?
We can't have an idea. It's too early to give plan to do plan for that. But every day increase, and every day is in progress, so it's good.
And finally, what are the chances, do you think, of him being back at the Tour de France and trying to win a 5th one next year?
I hope so. There is no bad lesion for the moment that compromise or jeopardize the comeback. Yeah.
And sorry, the final question. I understand you were on your way to China to treat some Chinese footballers. Did they ever get treated?
No, I go back in China in September to do the job.
Okay. So an update on Chris Froome there, really, from the doctor who's looking after him and the surgeon who operates on him, who said he's in daily contact with him as his recovery carries on. And I spoke to Luke Rowe as well at the start today, who said that he sends him daily updates from the Tour. He knows what it's like to be out long term with a serious injury as well. They all seem very confident that Froome will be back at the Tour next year and potentially going for a 5th win then. But he's 34 now. It's going to be very, very difficult, I think, for him to get back to the level he was at. And I think everybody hopes that he does return to the sport and certainly competes again. But it's not just the fact that he suffered a serious leg break, but that all the other injuries that he suffered, the hip, the elbow, the ribs, it's a combination of all of them, I think, which makes his case pretty complicated and serious and drawn out in his recovery.
No, if we're talking about Team Ineos, as you said, maybe it's interesting to... Actually, we're closing the first week of the Tour, and just a quick looking back. I talked to Jack Haig because we were Mitchelton-Scott this morning on riding his first Tour, and he was kind of surprised not how easy it is, but he was obviously expecting the Tour to be a little harder. This is to answer as well Jakob Fuglsang, who tried to launch a mini controversy about motorbikes, but let's face it, very, very few riders abandoned on this Tour after a week. So it's been a very kind of, not an easy Tour. It's never an easy Tour, but I mean, in terms of safety, it's probably never been that safe. And as for Team Ineos, we said it before, but they were not setting the pace at all in his first week. My impression is that for them the Tour de France will start in the Pyrenees, and so for the time being they've been really, really quiet. Today we saw that already. That little surge from Bardet, to me, was actually the kind of surge of the losers. I mean, I'm sorry for them, but the guys who probably, as soon as we get get to the high mountains won't be in contention for the GC. So an interesting first week, in a sense, for the first time in a long time in the Tour de France, we have a first week that in my opinion, will be almost separated from the rest of the race. And Julien Alaphilippe said in his press conference he was aware of it, and he was saying, listen, I had no illusions about the GC before the Tour, and the fact that I'm having a jersey now, that didn't give me any more illusions. He said, holding the yellow jersey in the first week or holding the yellow jersey in Paris are two very different things. So I wanted to make this
Shall we hear a little bit of your chat with
Jack
Haig
let's
this
listen to
morning?
Jack Haig. So it's interesting to listen to a rookie.
So far I've really enjoyed it, to be honest. I think after talking to a lot of the other guys in the peloton, it's been one of the more relaxed starts to the Tour de France, which is nice. And experiencing the Tour and the circus that it is for the first time, it's been pretty cool. I did expect more stress in the peloton to begin with, but luckily I think with the way the parcours have been, it's been a little bit less stressful than previous years.
The intensity of racing, you find it a little bit, up tempo considered with other races?
Yeah, I think there's just much more stress. It's very rare that the peloton is quite lined out. It's much more of a bigger bubble just because everyone wants to be at the front and everyone wants to be attentive to things. So it's a much more compact and fast peloton rather than in other races.
Just on that point, François, the first week, I mean, it's a long first week, isn't it? 10 stages. We finish tomorrow night in Albi. We'll be down in the southwest and, as you say, into the Pyrenees and the time trial. And really, there's no transitional stages from this point on. Maybe the Nîmes stage, although it doesn't transition anywhere because it goes round in a circle and finishes back in Nîmes. That could be a sprint day. But already, when you look at how the spoils have been shared out, Jumbo-Visma have won 3 stages, De Koning Quick-Step have won a couple, Bora Hansgrohe, Bahrain Merida, Mitchelton-Scott now and Bahrain and Lotto Soudal yesterday. Already in the great game of musical chairs that the Tour de France is, there's certainly not going to be a chair for everybody come Paris, and there'll be some teams next week that are starting to look a little bit desperate, especially as the jerseys are. Peter Sagan has got the green jersey pretty much locked up. No one has worn more green jerseys than Sagan now. He's overtaken the record. Lotto Soudal have got their eyes set on the polka dot jersey, and you'd imagine that Egan Bernal, no matter what happens in the race, will probably take over the white jersey. There's a dearth of prizes left on offer, and so that could see some interesting racing, certainly in the middle week before everyone gets desperate in the Alps.
Just before we go, I should mention the folding bike that we're giving away as a competition prize. You can win the bike I'm riding around on. It was very helpful today, actually. Carbon fibre, the Austin Cycles Atto bike. We'll post some pictures of that. It's a beautiful machine. You can stand a chance of winning it if you sign up to our newsletter at thecyclingpodcast.com. When you get the newsletter, you'll be able to click through to Austin Cycles, and if you leave your name and give us a reason why you should win the folding bike, we'll choose the best one as a winner. One of the entries is from Keith Cunningham. We like this one, Keith. I roar like a buffalo, I sing like a brie. The Lionel of Flanders ain't got nothing on me. Get out of my way, I'm coming through. Chiro's on lead out, but Orla's there too. Daniel's got hopes, but he's just not aero on my Atto. Sayonara, big hero. Not sure if I read out the last line correctly, but no mention for François there.
No,
sorry, François.
so you
anyway.
lost. I'm sorry, mate.
Yeah, sorry, Keith. No bike for you. No, that'll definitely that definitely comes under consideration. Before we do go, before we hear François, a few thank yous to recent friends of the podcast: Chris Stevenson, William Caruso, Chris Burnett, and Michael Wake.
Murdoch McPhee, Chloe Porteous, James Evans, Catherine Metcalf, John O.D.
And a big thank you to Andrew Rumble, James Hayton, Stefan Schaefer, Stephen Peters and Mark Robson. Thank you for becoming friends of the podcast. We've got some new friends of the podcast content coming after the Tour de France, haven't we? A couple of things in the pipeline.
We do. So François, please.
Yeah. I'd have to thank as well my friend Gilles Mas, because Gilles Mas is a team director for AG2R. He was the last person I thought was listening to the podcast, and this morning, because he lives in Saint-Étienne, I met him. You know, he's one of the team directors of Romain Bardet and all, and he told me, "Oh, you do work for the Cycling Podcast? Unbelievable! I listen to you every day, every morning to improve my English." So there you are. Another purpose for the Cycling Podcast. It should be taught in French schools. Now, that was my little. La Marseillaise. Yeah, I'll do it croon. So 1, 2, 3. Allons enfants de la patrie, le jour de gloire est arrivé. Contre nous de la tyrannie, l'étendard sanglant est levé. L'étendard sanglant est levé. Entendez-vous dans nos campagnes mugir ces féroces soldats qui viennent jusque dans nos bras, égorger nos filles et nos compagnes. Aux armes, citoyens, formez vos bataillons, marchons, aucun sang impur abreuve nos sillons.
Tomorrow night, Lionel does the Soldier's Song.